We finally have all the details about Lynn, the newest character, although not technically a new character, a replacement for the Beast Tamer. The Beast Tamer in the GMS servers is going to become the Lynn class. When is that going to happen? Well, I don't know for sure, but the roadmap that they released back in January did say May. Now, I don't know if that's about another announcement coming in May, or if it's actually the date that we're getting the class. Either way, I'm just here to talk about Lynn's kit because it looks absolutely ridiculous. And if you want to check it out for yourself, both links I will be using will be down in the description below, that being the Orange Mushroom blog for patch notes, and all of the Lynn footage I'll be using will be from X3 the ARAN59's channel, also known as Steve. Go check his video out if you want to see it. I will not be showing the whole thing in entirety, I will just be referencing parts of it. And to really put a lot of what she does in context, it is kind of important to know what the Beast Tamer does currently, and I gotta admit, I don't know a lot of this to verify if she still does it or not. I'm not really a fan of the Beast Tamer, so I don't really look into it, and I don't play in parties, so I don't know what they offer for sure, but we'll trust this list. So let's kick it off with one of the most unique things about Lynn, and that is a class-defining mechanic for her, that being her focus, where she chooses a party member, then their portrait will go to the right side of your screen, indicating that they are your focus target, and if you press the key, it will rapidly cycle through the targets you could choose from, aka your party members. If there is no party member, you are considered the focus target. Oh, and in case you're curious, her Link skill is remaining the same, however, in TMS, currently the patch notes say it only goes to level 2. So if we get a level 3 again, we'll have to wait and see about that one, because right now it's unclear, and her character card, or her Legion block, is still ignore enemy defense. On to first job, because that was all the beginner skill look. Now I will say that I'm not going to show off the entire kit here. I am going to show you some of her attacks so you have a general idea of how she fights. I'm just not going to show you the entire thing, because again, that is the whole point of Steve's video. So if you want that, well, then you should go watch Steve's video, because what I'm going to focus on is just how good she looks for bossing and what utility she offers, which is a lot. I mean, Beast Tamer offers a lot too, but I don't like the Beast Tamer, but Lynn looks really good. But if you want to talk bossing utility, let's look at focus healing. This skill is absolutely insane. There are a lot of different heals in MapleStory right now, and you know, some of them are pretty good, but for the most part, they're all reaction tools, something you have to press after you take a hit. And if you're taking the time to cast something like that, that means you are nerfing your DPS, which is exactly why lifesteal is generally a little bit better in the average scenario. Focus healing though, this gives you or the target party member of your choice the ability to just regen an insane amount of health at 20% max HP every 1 second for 40 seconds every 60 seconds. An ability like this is absolutely going to trivialize things like Phase 1 Will, Phase 3 Will, or all of Lotus and all of Darknell. You know, avoid the one-shots and you aren't going to have to worry about the chip damage at all, because this is pretty much going to cover you, or the target party member of your choice. If you're trying to carry someone through a fight for the first time, this is really going to help them survive. Now moving on to second job, where we're already getting another incredibly useful bossing tool in Wind Raider. The skill is basically a lighter miniature version of the Shadower's 5th job skill or the Buccaneer's 5th job skill, where you can store charges and dash a small distance. The main difference is, one, you are not going to go as far as something like the Buccaneers goes, which sounds like a bad thing, but in bossing, more often than not, you don't really need to go super far, you just need to do little micro adjustments. So having one charge of this every 5 seconds up to 5 charges is really good. And similarly to the Buccaneer skill, it looks like it's not capable of going straight up or down and has to go diagonal or straight forward. This one's an attack, but her bird companion will basically seek out targets kind of like the common 5th job archer skill, where the arrow just flies off and hits things. This one's a little bit slower, but this is an incredibly useful tool to have for grinding. Moderately useful for bossing, mostly for Helix. You know, sometimes these kind of abilities go down and kill the little guys trying to get to the center, but she actually has something that's going to cover that later. And I guess by later, I mean right now, because we're moving on to third job, in which she gets a ground summon, very similar to what we have with Dawn Warrior. Once again, a tool that is generally more considered with grinding, but there are times like in Golix where this can be very helpful, or it's even sometimes in Lotus, you can use it to block off a particular robot spawning in phase 1. You know, if you're strong enough, and if you are, you're probably not in phase 1 for long enough, but hey, it's something that helps. It's got a 30-second duration and a 30-second cooldown, so you know, pretty standard stuff there. Now here's an interesting one. She gets focus support flight, and since focus is the name, this utilizes the focus mechanic. When you use this button regularly, you are going to fly to the target ally's position. However, if you hold down while you press the key, you summon them to you, and this is on a 20-second cooldown. Now this can be used for evil, but this can also be used to save a party member who is otherwise occupied, not paying attention to boss mechanics, and you can save their life, or you can go to them. Either way, this is actually a pretty useful tool, not only for survivability, but you can actually allow certain classes that have a really strong burst to maybe get a couple more seconds DPSing, where otherwise they would have had to run away to get away from a mechanic. You can save them at the last possible second. And lastly, for bossing utility ability in third job, she has a status cleanse over time. It's a 20-second buff on a 30-second cooldown that constantly tries to cleanse status effects every 2 seconds, and the maximum number of statuses it can cleanse is 5. I don't know if that's for the whole party or if it's for each individual person, it doesn't specify. Either way, there are some fights where passive status cleanse can be quite the meaningful thing. Then this isn't really utility, but she has a party-wide 30% IE debuff. 240-second duration, pretty standard stuff there. Moving on to fourth job, the Lynn gets some kind of emergency retreat, which then she can float, which a pretty standard thing for mages to be able to do, and as we all know, that is a pretty helpful mechanic in a lot of bosses, which is why we all use Blink. However, I don't think this is going to directly replace Blink because the distance it sends you flying backwards is pretty substantial, and during a fight like Lucid, that is an extreme liability with all the golems lying around. But that's totally fine because we have room for both. And if griefing one ally with support flight was not good enough for you, she actually gets an ability in this job that summons every party member to your location on a very, very low 30-second cooldown. That's pretty good, or pretty bad depending on which way you look at it. If you're ever in a public bossing party and you see a Lynn has more lives than everyone else, I wouldn't be surprised if they got a little bit evil and tried to, you know, get rid of some of the competition for the drops. So be extra nice to the Lynns, I guess, as if all their supporting utility isn't enough of a reason to be nice to them already. Next up is Predator Strike, a 40-second cooldown attack that makes the enemy take 10% more damage for 40 seconds. And as if focus healing was not enough healing on its own, given that it's, you know, it's single target, she has another hot heal over time for the entire party. So basically this skill has a 60-second cooldown and it instantly removes all status effects immediately on cast applied to the party and heals them by 100%, so it's an instant heal, and it provides a healing effect for 10% max HP every 1 second or 30 seconds. So if you're soloing, you are always going to have a heal over time on you if you stagger these, and sometimes you're even going to have 2 on you, healing for 30% HP every second. That is ridiculous. And don't worry, because there is stuff coming later on that makes this even crazier, which really just takes us right into one of the first passives from her fourth job tree, which is just a buff to her focus healing enhancement. This is going to increase the healing HP recovered by 10%, bumping it up to 30% on its own, or 40% when you combine it with the previous skill. It also adds 10 attack and magic attack to the buff, so more damage. The next passive is a buff to the Laws of Nature buff, which was the IED. This adds 10% drop rate to it, presumably for the whole party. Seems to be worse than what Beast Tamers used to give, but hey, drop rate is still drop rate. Moving on to the hyper skills, and the first one is going to be an active that is very similar to Battle Mage's Party Shield or Smoke Bomb from Shadower. You take 30% less damage while you're inside. Yes, that applies to HP percent attacks, and on top of the reduction, you can even resist death once every 300 seconds. The cooldown of this ability is also 300 seconds. Moving on to fifth job, we have a common skill that is something I can't find footage for, but the concept of it seems relatively simple. Basically, 4 different buffs pop up over your head. They correspond to numbers. You hit the number of the buff you want, and then you get a buff on a cooldown. Initially, I assume the way this works is you have to choose one of the buffs, and then the cooldown applies to all of them, and then you can select a new one at the end of the cooldown. But honestly, I don't know if you can actually pick all of these buffs, and they all have separate cooldowns. Would be kind of neat if it worked that way, but it would also be a little bit of a nightmare to micromanage and keep those different buffs up. Anyway, moving on to her fifth job skills. First of all, she has 2 attacks. Not really going to go too into those. They're 220-second cooldowns that do, they look like they do pretty substantial damage. One transforms your bird into a giant bird, and the other one is just like a crazy, watch this little wolf companion go nuts kind of thing. But let's get into the real exciting part. So essentially, Lynn is getting Bishop's Benediction, but for one target. This skill is called Focus Awakening. When the skill is activated, your entire party is going to become exhausted, meaning they can't benefit from this buff until exhausted is gone, which is basically the exact same duration as the cooldown of the ability, 120 seconds. Unlike the focus healing buff, you cannot be the focus target for this. However, you will always get at least a 30% final damage buff for 30 seconds out of this. However, your focus target is going to get a 10% buff with additional effects based on your intelligence, just like Bishop's. For every 1000 int, the final damage boost is going to be increased by 1% up to a maximum of 110%. If you're someone who actually likes to boss in a duo with a friend, then this is going to be a really potent combo. You get one of the strongest buffs in the game without having to actually play Bishop in case you don't like it for whatever reason. And moving on to her final fifth job skill, we have Grace of Nature. And this is where her healing gets a lot of extra value. I mean, a lot. The simplified version of this ability is you instantly heal all party members by 100% HP. Then the Lynn gets a buff called Transcendent Healing, and for 30 seconds, all healing effects can heal up to 200% of your max HP. In doing so, that HP HP is going to be turned into a shield that protects her health. This one is on a 180-second cooldown, and again, like, just absolute insane survivability coming out of the Lynn class. Not only is chip damage basically not going to affect her because of how many heal over time spells she has, but now she basically has a self-repairing wind archer shield. All that ridiculous healing over time is going to create so many overshields. And then finally, there are the known 6-job enhancements, the first meaningful one being for Focus Awakening, aka the Benediction-like ability. Basically, the final damage boost to yourself is being increased to 40% at level 30, and the final damage boost given to the target is being increased to 20%. Then for Grace of Nature, both the healing effects are being improved by 10%, both the base initial heal and the maximum heal, but most importantly, the duration is going up to 40 seconds. So yeah, that's like all the crazy bossing utility that Lynn has. Is it as much as the Beast Tamer has? I don't really know. Again, I'm being pretty upfront that I really don't know much about the Beast Tamer. Lynn, on the other hand, with her main attack that, in my opinion, is very reminiscent of Shade's main attack, and I really like that because I love Shade, in combination with the fact that she's a mage with, an up jump and a dash like Buccaneers, which also means, she has no iframe. I didn't mention one. I couldn't find one. However, being a mage, just like Beast Tamer is, that means she should have access to ethereal form, which is more or less just as good as an iframe. Now, will her damage be as good with this much supportability? Honestly, who knows? According to my snapshot, Chase did pretty poorly in Punch King, being 6th from last, but Punch King isn't perfect, so, we'll have to see. So please tell me what you think about Lynn down in the comments below, especially if you're a Beast Tamer main. I would love to hear if you're happy with this. I hope a lot of you are, because Lynn looks really damn good, but people get attached to their classes, and this is quite a drastic change, even though it's staying relatively similar. So thank you to you for watching, thank you to my members and my patrons for supporting me as always, and I'll see you in the next one.